one of the coolest things about Smoak is I got the chance to coach him. So I go really deep and personal in my coaching with people, and I got to like really see the insides of a lot of his psychology, and most importantly his character and his values. And you know, when you meet somebody that you've been following online, sometimes, most of the times, we're kind of like let down. We're like, damn, they seem way cooler online. This guy's kind of a douche. Like, that wasn't the case with Smoak. He was like super nice, super humble, super good dude. But more importantly, he's just got great character. And yeah, I could see that with some of the things that he would tell me that he was struggling with, which obviously I won't share, but he may go into some of that. But it was really cool to see like his intention for what he's doing with HigherUp Wellness. I've been telling people, every company that I connect him with, or speaking opportunity, or client opportunity, I always tell him like, hey, he is having a huge impact, and he's great, but he is completely undervalued in the market, like 100%. The impact that he's had is a fraction of where he's going, and he's in a lot of momentum because for the right reasons. I love those comments that you guys probably see if you see them, if you follow them, and they're like, we made the right guy famous. Like, I love those comments because they're so true. So anyway, we'll give it up to Smoak. We'll dive into this for about 30 minutes and hear his story. So give it up to Michael Smoak. HigherUp Wellness.
Appreciate it, man. All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to apologize in advance for a couple things. Number one, I've never had to give a talk with 2 things in my hands, and I feel like my brain is now doing 10 things at once. But thank you all for being here, first and foremost, for investing a little bit of time and a little bit of money to sit down with us and hopefully learn something. I would also like to apologize in advance for our PowerPoint skills. For what we lack in abundance around PowerPoint skills, I'm hoping we can make up for in quality content and delivery. But I certainly didn't go to college for Microsoft Office. We'll leave it at that. So, my name is Michael Smoak, otherwise known as HigherUp Wellness. And Gabe, I don't think I actually told you this, but this is a really cool full circle moment for me. Colin did introduce us at one of these events last year, and I remember seeing him on the panel with a few other people talking about their feats and accomplishments. And this was right around the time my social media started to gain some traction and some momentum. And I remember sitting right there in the back of the room, the gentleman in the brown jacket is, with my buddy Jake Hayes, and thinking, I gotta do one of these one day. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I wanna talk. So this is a really cool full circle moment for me, and I'm honored and I'm humbled, so thank you. Let's figure out which arrow sends me in the right direction of this PowerPoint. Did you give me a busted remote, brother? Are you gonna be operating this for me? Are you gonna be my disc jockey here?
Here, take this one.
This is gonna be fun.
Sorry.
It would be too easy if everything went as planned. So, a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me and are here just to support Gabe and support the vision and the mission. I appreciate that. As of today, we'll start at present day and work our way back. I'm Michael Smoak, as Gabe said, HigherUp Wellness on various social media platforms, and today I am a coach. I run an online training business. I'm a content creator and a podcaster. All good?
If you want to just give me the cue for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give you one of these. That's all right. Let's give you one of these. And this started in March of 2023, so it's all happened very quickly when I hit a boiling point, as he alluded to. I decided the fitness industry was muddied with complicated advice, people trying to sell snake oil and things that don't really work, to exploit people who don't have knowledge or education. This stuff really is incredibly simple. It's not always easy to execute, but the principles you need to follow are simple. And if you can just stick to them for an extraordinary period of time, you can create extraordinary results. And so that's what the mission was, and it obviously blew up far beyond my expectations or belief, which I'm grateful for and I'm humbled to have the opportunity to do. And in doing that, in the last year, I can't get too close to these speakers, I'm realizing now. It's gonna keep me from pacing. In doing some of the social media endeavors I've taken on the last year, in tandem with that, I've been fortunate to do some pretty fun and fulfilling physical challenges. In November of 2022, I ran my first marathon, having never run more than 5 miles, which was intimidating to say the least. That's me hugging my dad right after I crossed the finish line. That's my best friend. The very next November, I decided to sign up for an ultra marathon. Had never done that. Ran it with a couple of good buddies that are in this room today. I was underprepared, I was undertrained, and though I know we have some endurance savages in the room, it was the hardest thing I've ever done physically. Running 33, though it should have been 31 miles, I got lost, so I got extra credit. Miles was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then in July of this year, I took on another challenge is the clip not working? To take a 6:20 all-out mile to a sub 5 minute and 10-second mile to compete in wherever the evil genius Colin Beecham's event was. to break the Guinness World Record for the fastest ever 100 by 1 mile relay. So me and 99 other people, Colin included, got together. We all ran a mile, passed a baton 100 times, and we averaged a 5 minute and 4 second pace across 100 miles, all because he had a crazy idea that he wanted to try to break a world record. And I'm proud to say, as of a couple months ago, we are the official Guinness World Record holders for the fastest ever 100-mile relay. So big round of applause for Colin Beecham. Pretty incredible accomplishment for him to put that together, and I was proud to be a part of it. But before that, before I did any of those things, I was just a corporate guy. I did 3 years in outside sales, B2B outside sales, working for a great company in Metro Atlanta called Milner Technologies, where I sold IT and cybersecurity services to small to medium-sized businesses, protecting their critical assets from a cybersecurity standpoint. Prior to that, how I landed that gig was making what I still think is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, joining the sales program at Kennesaw State University and getting my bachelor's degree in professional selling. It's not common. There's only about 30 schools in the country that do it, but it taught me 80% of the skills that I use today, that I'm using right now, standing on this stage, this floor, if you will, taught me how to accurately and proactively communicate, a skill that we truly can train and develop. We are not fixed with our communication skills at birth. It taught me how to sell myself, because everything in life is sales, whether you're in sales or not. That's another talk for another day. But it taught me the skills that I use in sales for myself as an entrepreneur, selling my training services and selling people like you on the internet on the idea of following me for advice. Can't believe I fooled some of you into that. Before all of that, 7 years ago, I hit a rock bottom point, or as some people call it, I have called it my fuck it moment. And I looked in the mirror and saw the picture you see on the left. I was 230 pounds. I was drinking 4 to 5 times a week. I was being a college kid. I had changed my major 2 or 3 times. I had no clue what the hell I wanted to do. And I was just fed up. I was tired of it. I felt like shit. My internal self-talk was poor. I never said anything good about myself. I was brain fogged. I was tired, and I was tired of what I saw in the mirror. And so I decided to take ownership of the one thing I knew I could somehow figure out how to control. It was my physical health. If I could do that, maybe the rest of the things would work out. In doing that, and the reason I share all this with you is because throughout that process of building my body and building a physique that I was proud of, I developed the first taste of the thing that I think I was really missing, and I think a lot of people are missing, that I believe prevents them from stepping into their purpose, taking risks, and seizing opportunity. Good to go. And that is confidence and self-belief. Everybody says that. Oh, believe in yourself. Be confident. Okay, what's your name? Oh, Alex. Alex, if I just tell you to be confident and believe in yourself, that's not very tangible advice. Everybody says to be confident, but nobody tells you how to do it. Because confidence without evidence is delusion. If you do not have things to lean on, proof to lean on, then you will ultimately fail in the face of adversity or challenges. EJ, will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Will you just read that loud and proud for the room so I can take a sip of water, that quote?
Okay. You don't become confident by shouting affirmations to the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork yourself down.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So that's a quote from Alex Hormozy. You've probably seen that at some point on your social media pages. That quote changed my life. You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Nobody can tell me I'm not a runner. Nobody can tell me I'm not a coach. I'm not a content creator. I have evidence to lean on that supports my identity, and in times of adversity, I pull from that confidence. And the reason I share those things that I did with you is not to brag about some sense of accomplishment that I've achieved, maybe a little bit, you're a captive audience, but overall is to tell you that confidence is not a narrow or channeled thing. It's a universal language, and you can pull from the proof that you build and stack through other things and put it into certain facets of your life that you feel you're lacking. The confidence that I gained from the marathon enabled me to show up in rooms like this and talk to people, because I knew if I prepared for something, I could execute. Proper preparation always prevents poor performance. And I learned that lesson through marathon prep, and I took that into my professional career, and then I took that into the ultra marathon, and I took that into the 5-minute mile. And these things that I did gave me proof that ultimately led to me quitting a cushy 6-figure corporate job to dive into one of the highest failure rate things you can possibly do, entrepreneurship. So you don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. Maybe they have their place in the world, but ultimately it comes to stacking proof, and you do that in a couple of different ways. Number one, you keep the promises you make to yourself. I don't care how small or how big they are. If you say you're gonna make your bed every day, make your damn bed. If you say you're gonna wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, wake up and go. It's like James Clear says in his book, Atomic Habits. Every action you take is casting a vote for the person you wish to become, no matter how big, how small, how good, or how bad. And every time you say these things to yourself and you don't do them, you are putting a small slash in your self-confidence. But every time you reinforce these behaviors by keeping the promises you make to yourself, you can stack that confidence and that proof and that evidence. I'm gonna go out on a limb here because we're in Atlanta and guess that you've all, or most of you, have heard of Jesse Itzler. Anybody heard of Jesse Itzler? Oh wow, that's less people than I thought. Wife or husband of Sarah Blakely, CEO of Spanx. The ladies probably know her. Jesse is a prominent Atlanta entrepreneur. He's a massive amount of success over his career. Hosted a pretty cool festival called Running Man that I know a couple of y'all have been to. I went this year. It was incredible, and it was from him on the Joe Rogan podcast that I first heard about this concept, the misogi. And he goes on to talk about how important it is and the place that it plays in his life. Misogi is a Japanese practice or principle that is basically intense challenge creating purification. So the way that he embodies this is every year he picks something that scares the shit out of him. A big challenge, a big goal. For him, typically it's physical. And it defines the year for him. He's done crazy stuff. He's run elevation over a period of time until he hit Mount Everest. He's done multiple 100-mile races. He's done some crazy, crazy stuff. He lived with David Goggins, for God's sakes. And so when I heard this, that was when I signed up for the marathon, because I had never run more than 5 miles in my entire life. So running 26 seemed inconceivable. And then I went out, I prepared, and I did it. And it's not the thing. It's not the crossing of the finish line that builds the proof and the evidence. It's the work you put in and what you learn about yourself on the way. You know, I'll never forget the 17-mile run I had to do in South Georgia in the heat of summer and thinking at mile 1, I am not going to finish it, and then finishing it. That proof, that evidence gave me momentum to carry into the race. It was a defining moment. It was 3.5 years ago, and I remember it to this day. So pick things that scare the shit out of you, develop a plan, become relentless about the systems to achieve them, and the goal, the thing you set out to do, will be a natural byproduct. If your systems are bulletproof, your goals are a side effect. They're not a chance. This matters because ultimately, I believe the life that you want is built on the foundation of relentless self-belief. Anybody know who said that? I just made it up. It sounds pretty good though. It sounds like somebody smart said it. You're good to go. Not too long ago, a friend of mine gave me a book. I was dealing with some challenging personal things, as Gabe alluded to. It's been a busy year, to say the least. I feel like I've lived 6 lifetimes in the last year and a half. And they gave me this book by a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he's got a couple of books. This one is You Are the Placebo. He has another book. Some of you are shaking your heads like, I love Dr. Joe. I'm glad to hear that. He's got another book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's in the book, You Are the Placebo, that I got this graphic and I heard this statement for the first time. He says in the book, your personality creates your personal reality. And the first time I heard that, it just shook me. And I didn't really understand it. And I'm more of a visual guy. If you can't tell, I just gave you my whole life story in 8 pictures. I'm not a big words guy. And I saw this graphic and I thought about it. The more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense to me. So I'm going to be a little bit presumptuous. Can we agree that to some degree, at least, all of us think that our thoughts dictate the life that we live or experience? Fair? Can we also agree that our actions definitely play a role in the impact of the life that we live or experience? Yeah? And that our feelings probably play a similar role in the life we live and experience, what we're aware of and what we notice? So then we can probably agree that if our thoughts, actions, and feelings, or what we define in neuroscience as our personality, all has an impact on the life we live, what we experience, what we notice, what we don't notice, then we can probably all agree to some degree that our personality creates our personal reality, or at least has an impact on it. When I discovered this, I thought back to that time 7 years ago when I was fed up with the reality I was living in. I was fat, I was drinking too much, I had horrible self-esteem and self-image issues, horrible self-talk. But I was a kid. I was 20 years old. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And in searching for desperate inspiration, I found one of those cliche motivational YouTube videos. And I'm glad I did, because in that moment, one of the guys in one of those clips said, if you don't know where to start with you. Become relentless about self-development, mental and physical. And as you do that, your path will become more clear. And I thought, well, that's the best plan I got, so why not start? And that's ultimately the thing that empowered me to change my life. So what did I do? I changed my actions. I started eating better. I stopped drinking so much. stopped going out so much. I started sleeping better. And as a result, as time came by and passed, and I started to stack evidence and proof that I was wanting to be, or that I was who I wanted to be and who I said I was, my thoughts started to change. I started to think about myself differently. I started to think about others differently and how to treat them, how to treat myself. I thought about the world around me differently as I started to show up for myself physically. And as that progressed even more, my feelings changed. I noticed my self-talk was improving. I noticed my feelings about people around me, how I cared for them, cared about them, wanted the best for them. That also changed. My feelings about my world changed. Ultimately, my actions triggered a change in my thoughts, which triggered a change in my feelings, which ultimately led me to make a series of decisions that I otherwise wouldn't have made had I not made the basic lifestyle change of getting the very most out of my body. It allowed me to put myself out of my comfort zone more, which led to me approaching a professor and finding the sales program, which taught me the skills that I learned today. It all built on changing my thoughts, actions, and feelings. So I can confidently say, I don't know about you guys, but I can confidently say that changing my personality, my thoughts, actions, and feelings on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis literally changed my personal reality. Because if it wasn't for the change I made 7 years ago, I quite literally would not be standing right here talking to you guys. So if you ever wonder why you're not happy, you don't know where to start with yourself. And if you're not happy with the outputs life is giving you, take a hard look at your inputs, your thoughts, actions, and feelings, and I think you'll be amazed at what changes. So, by now, you've heard me preach for, 10 or 15 minutes about how important I believe it is to take control of your life and your health through a foundation of physical health. And if you aren't in the best shape of your life right now, you feel like you have room for improvement, then there's one question that's kind of uncomfortable that you have to ask yourself, that I asked myself. What excuses are you using to justify not being in the best shape of your life? Because at the end of the day, anything you say is an excuse. And that's uncomfortable to admit. Ultimately, I believe that excuses are just a lack of education manifesting themselves as an excuse. Because at this point, having had close to 1,000 conversations with people about their health and fitness goals, I've been able to boil it down to just a couple of things. Gabe, you're good to go if you want to transition. I'm able to boil it down to a couple of main things. You're either uneducated or you're unwilling. 2 things. And that covers a wide gamut of issues and conversations that I've had. Now, when I say uneducated, I said earlier that excuses often manifest from a source or a sense of lack of education. Biggest things I hear, I don't have time to get fit. I don't want to be a slave to the gym. I don't have hours a week to spend in the gym and meal prep. Or I don't want to give up my social life. I have too much fun. I don't want to stop drinking or going out with my friends. Or I don't want to eat boring, bland food. I don't want to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli to get physically fit because they think that that's what it takes. But ultimately, if you can understand that the reason you think that it takes time and effort to the nth degree to build the body that you want, you can understand that it's actually just a lack of education to understand that it takes less amount of time per week than a part-time job to get in the best shape of your life. It took me about 9 to 10 hours a week to breed the transformation that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. And if you think that you have to eat boring, bland food that you hate, it's because you lack the education, the knowledge, and the resources to understand that if you know how to prepare and cook healthy, whole, natural foods, they're actually a lot better than some of the shit you'll get in a drive-thru or at a takeaway restaurant, and you'll start to prefer those things. And if you think that you have to give up your social life or stop drinking with your friends or enjoying yourself or being in the present moment with going out to bars or restaurants, and you lack the information and the education to understand how to balance and plan accordingly so that you can quite literally do both, as I do often. There we go. So uneducated. That's the simple fix. I believe it to be the simpler fix. That transformation on the left is the initial transformation, 230 pounds to 170 pounds. So in about 10 months, I lost 60 pounds of body fat. Everything I'm about to share with you is everything that I did and nothing more. And it's gonna sound boring, and he still doesn't believe that this is what I did and what I do, because he was like, there's no way, you only work out 3 days a week? We'll get to that in a minute. But there's a couple of decisions you have to make, because I believe everybody is 4 or 5 key choices away every day from looking and feeling totally different, and none of it is groundbreaking, revolutionary, or painful. The first thing you need to do is raise your awareness. A lot of people that I talk to work desk jobs, and I'm gonna guess the majority of you guys work in an office setting. What does that not lend itself to? An active lifestyle. Because if you sit, you're not gonna walk. I'm a big steps guy. Some of you know that. I track my steps, I do step challenges, it's a ton of fun. I love it, and it was a game changer for me. A lot of people I talk to say, I just don't have time, man. I'm on calls all day, I'm in meetings all day. How the hell am I gonna get 10,000 steps? And then we look at their calendar, and I realize, hey man, you've got a 15-minute gap here, you've got a 20-minute gap here, you've got a 25-minute gap here. but you don't have the awareness to understand that no amount of exercise, no matter how big or small, is not inconsequential or not worth doing. So what I would do in the corporate world was, if I had 10 minutes for a meeting, I was taking a 5-minute walk, and then I was taking 5 minutes to prep for the meeting. And in the moment, that sounds insignificant. What is a 5-minute walk gonna get me? Less than a quarter mile? Maybe, but over the course of a day, you gave yourself 5 minutes, 10 or 12 separate times between meetings, and you accumulated an hour of walking. And it's one of those like light bulb moments, like, why didn't I think of that? Because you didn't have the awareness. You were sitting at your desk scrolling when you could have been up moving in between calls. It's these small micro decisions I was making or not making throughout the day that ultimately paid the biggest dividends for me. The next thing is around habits. I think that people fail in fitness when they believe it to be too complicated because they try to do too much. They take the New Year's resolutioner approach. Starting tomorrow, I'm gonna work out 5 days a week, no soda, no processed sugar, I'm gonna walk an hour and a half a day, and I'm gonna do the Stairmaster. All of these things, they are trying to sprint before they can crawl. And of course they fail. Of course it's complicated. I don't even do 90% of that stuff now, and I've been doing this for almost a decade. So I get why you think that. So what I tell people is stop with this ceiling shit. Stop trying to reach for the stars with your habits and instead have a floor. Have a bare minimum of non-negotiables every day that you know no matter what you do, no matter what life throws at you, you can adhere to. Because compliance is the science. You're gonna see the best results in what you like and can stick to long term. And that's different for everybody. So for me, my minimums are the 3 things that I'm gonna share with you now. Number 1, whole foods, 90% of the time, protein centric. No, I'm not talking about the overpriced grocery store on West Paces. I'm talking about whole, natural foods. Rule is simple. If it grew in the ground, grew on a tree, had a mom and dad, make that 90% of your diet. I know the last one's a little vulgar, I apologize. An animal. Whole foods, 90% of the time, protein centric. I knew if I did that, whether I was eating out, traveling, at my house, I could control my calorie intake, I could get enough protein, and more or less over the span of months and years, my goals would align with where I needed to be nutritionally. The next thing that I did, non-negotiable for me, was 60 minutes of walking every single day. Again, that can sound like a little bit of a big commitment if you just need to block a straight hour of your night. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't care how you break it up. I broke it up in the weirdest ways sometimes. 3-minute and 37-second walks here, a 10-minute walk there. As long as I got to an hour, I knew I was getting a little bit closer to my goal every single day. And the last thing I did, non-negotiable for me, was I got on a really solid 3-day-a-week strength training program. In doing that, I built a program that forced me to progress and get stronger. And it literally, to this day, this is the thing he doesn't believe, that I work out 3 times a week for 60 minutes. It's a full body split. I go in, I do a couple of sets, I try to get stronger, and I get out. And that's it. That's the revolutionary formula, the secret they don't want you to know, the bullshit people sell you on the internet. None of it is that. Why? Because it's not sexy. It's actually remarkably boring. And the byproduct of this is that you have to be willing to do boring, obvious things for extraordinary periods of time if you want extraordinary results. I heard someone say the other day, I'm not extraordinary, I just do the ordinary extra. I just do the things that you're not doing every day, every single day. And what that results to over the course of months and years, 7 years, is extraordinary results. The second one is a little bit more complicated. So maybe by now, and you can stop at the percentages, maybe by now, you're either sold or not sold. Maybe the rah-rah stuff is just not enough for you. You're like, I'm not the motivational type, this is not convincing me. That's fine. Sometimes I need to see numbers and I need to see data. So does anyone want to take a crack at what these are? The percentages? Anybody have a guess of why I just threw a bunch of numbers on the board?
Percentage of fat?
No. Camilla, do you have a guess? I saw you raise your hand. Now you're stuck. Oh, you were waving. Okay, no guesses. That's all right. No one's bold enough. I don't blame you. You can go ahead. These percentages, it's very straightforward. I'm a big appeal to logic guy myself. So these are the things that will get better or get worse, get better, improve, or you'll be more likely of or less likely of, respectively, as a result of taking basic human care of yourself. When I became aware of these things and became more passionate about my health, this is one of the things that put it into perspective for me. In 2018, I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's. But she was alive for years with that disease. And if you guys have dealt with it, you know how horrible it is. It's an evil disease because they're right there, but they're not. And they don't know who you are, they don't know how they got there, they're completely confused and disoriented. And as I progressed through becoming more into health and wellness, I started to learn more about the cognitive benefits of physical activity and proper nutrition. And that was fascinating to me. So just by working out all the parameters of the clinical research I'm pulling these percentages from, and this is all clinical data, you can look it up, is based on a simple parameter of 2 to 4 hours a week of exercise, which is less than I was even asking of you. What I was looking at is a 8 to 10 hour a week commitment. Huge, I know. But with these parameters, 2 hours a week of exercise yielded these results. So you were 50% less likely to develop cardiovascular disease, the #1 killer of human beings in the United States. It kills 700,000 people a year, and we're not doing much about that on a federal level, but you can do a lot about it on a personal level, like taking care of yourself. One research study found that people who physically exercise regularly were 25% more likely to say they built strong networks. Maybe it's because we're getting out more, you're doing group fitness, you're getting in the gym, or maybe where are a lot of successful people at in the morning? At the gym. So you're 25% more likely to build strong networks. You are 14% more likely to be in an above average income job just by being physically fit. They also found that on average, people who took good physical care of themselves earned about 10% more across the span of their careers and lifetimes, just by being physically fit. It's a crazy correlation, but I thought it was fascinating. A 30% reduced risk of major depression. Any of you guys that work out regularly know the benefits of exercise when it comes to you're having a high anxiety day or you're going through some shit in your personal life. Having that time for you in and of itself is incredibly powerful, but also we know at a physiological level, the endorphins, the neurotransmitters that are released fight and combat depression. In some countries, we were talking about this the other day, they prescribe exercise as a phase 1 intervention for clinical anxiety and depression because it releases dopamine, because it releases serotonin and the things that you are deficient in when you're battling these things. And I know that's when it feels hardest to do, but that is when it is absolutely most important to do them. And a 30 to 35% decreased risk of all-cause mortality, which is a big term that I think confuses people. Basically, all-cause mortality is simple. It's the things that kill us earlier than they should. Heart disease, diabetes, strokes, cancer, everything that gets the modern American in their 40s, 50s, and 60s as a result of the decisions that they make in their 20s and 30s. So just by exercising a few hours a week across the board, your outcome for just about every possible health and quality of life metric drastically improves. Now, I'm not a betting man, I don't gamble, maybe some of you do, but I like those odds. You tell me all I have to do is spend a little time every week investing in myself, being in a meditative state, training, doing something for me, and I get the benefits. It's like they always say, if you could put this in a pill, I'd be a billionaire if I could do it. But most people aren't willing to do the work. So just some interesting facts around that. One of the first things that I noticed when I started taking better care of myself was I felt clearer, is the best way I know to put it. Maybe some of you who lived a less than average lifestyle or a less than healthy lifestyle will say and turned it around, you notice the same thing. As soon as I cleaned up my diet, I started sleeping an extra hour a night, I started moving every single day. I was like, man, everything, I feel sharper. I'm like more on the ball. People always say, they'll use the phrase, my brain fog feels like it's lifted. A fit body is a fit mind. But if you don't want to take my word for it, that's fine. There's clinical data to support this. You will find I'm a bit of a nerd about this stuff because I need to believe it, and I need to believe it through research. So there's a really interesting thing that happens when we exercise. And when we think about exercise, what do we think? Muscle contraction. A muscle contracts and it lengthens. When that happens, our body releases these things called myokines. One of the myokines it releases is a chemical compound called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, when it's released from the muscles, travels into the bloodstream, where it crosses the blood-brain barrier and goes into our brain, literally allowing our brain to build new neurons and new synapses and increase what's called neuroplasticity. And it is a critical component of learning and memory. And we know that fit people have more neuroplasticity, meaning they learn and retain skills and information and knowledge better than people who aren't physically active. So maybe you don't give a shit about getting abs or getting to 10% body fat. That's fine. Maybe you care about being smarter. I don't know about you, I do. And I notice when I take care of myself, I feel that. If that's not enough, I completely understand. There's also some interesting evidence around the acute benefits of exercise as it pertains to cognition. One research study found that subjects were given a cognitive exam prior to and after a bout of short aerobic exercise, a brisk walk, and across the board, all subjects scored higher on the cognitive exam. Different exams, of course, not the same test. Across the board on the cognitive exam, most likely due to the increased blood flow to the brain and slight release of endorphins, increasing energy, alertness, and focus. So before big calls, before big meetings, we were talking about trying to squeak in a walk before this. It's always a non-negotiable for me, even if I just have 5 minutes, I'm gonna go get some steps in. I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna move my body. because I know I feel sharper, I know I feel on the ball, and me on the other side of that activity is a better me. The last thing, if that's not enough for you, I get it. There is a direct correlation with waistline and brain volume. This was really interesting to me. They did a correlative study. Now, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but there is almost a direct linear correlation with waist size and brain volume, meaning they observed that as the waistline went up, as you were overweight, the size of your brain literally shrunk. The brain is a metabolic organ, just like the pancreas, the liver, the kidneys. If you are overweight, if you are metabolically unhealthy, the side effects and the symptoms manifest themselves in those places, and the brain is one of them. This one is a topic that people don't like to admit, so naturally, I'm going to hammer on it. The fact of the matter is, your body, your physique, is a physical manifestation of your habits and your discipline, or the lack thereof. Is it fair that when you walk into a room, people will snap judge you based on how you look physically? Absolutely not. Does that make it any less true? Absolutely not. So why not stack the deck in your favor? Why not give people a preconceived notion about you that's positive? I know for a fact when I see someone who works out and takes care of themselves, like I made snap judgments about that guy right there. He's jacked, right? I saw him immediately. I was like, I bet that guy takes care of himself. He takes himself seriously. He respects himself. He can clearly stick to something for an extraordinary period of time. Building a physique is about more than how you look. It changes your behaviors. It exemplifies the traits you do or don't have. And it's people's first impression of you. Before they ever speak to you, before you shake their hand and look them in the eye and smile at them, they will notice how you look physically. So for me, it's a non-negotiable that I started showing up in my best form physically. And I noticed in my corporate career, people treated me differently. In my everyday life, people treated me differently. I thought, first off, wow, this is bullshit. I'm the same guy. I just look different. This is not fair. But why not reap the benefits? Because you really are just 4 or 5 key decisions away every single day from reaping those benefits. The only barrier between you and that is time on task over time. And that's the hard part to overcome, but it's the unfortunate reality. You just got to stick with it. I'll leave you guys with this. If everything I just said went in one ear and out the other, and you think this is all just woo-woo bullshit and you're not into it, I get it. It's not for everybody. You don't have to be obsessed with fitness. But let this be the thing you do take home with you. If you do hard things, you will lead an ultimately easier life. You will change your relationship to stress. From a neuroscience perspective, our brain doesn't necessarily recognize where stress comes from. It recognizes stress or no stress, whether it's financial troubles, relationship troubles, personal issues, physical stress in the form of not taking care of yourself. Certain neurotransmitters, cortisol, adrenaline, are released chronically in bouts of this stress. And it's theorized that if we can manufacture stress in our everyday lives through hard physical training, endurance challenges, cold exposure, heat exposure, if we can acutely stress ourselves in moments, we can actually change our relationship to stress. Meaning that if we have these hard times that we arise on, we can sit in them more comfortably. We can be more well-equipped and well-armed to handle them. Andrew Huberman, some of you probably know who he is, has a great quote that I absolutely love about this. He says something to the effect of, we should do self-elected hard things, because when life's non-elected challenges arise, and they will, you can tell yourself, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know that I can do hard things. Hard things are always worth doing. They're not always easy to do, but they're always simple to stick to. And if you find yourself struggling with doing these hard things, always ask yourself, what would me tomorrow want me today to do? Because you tomorrow probably has your best interest at heart. You today doesn't want to go to the gym. It doesn't want to make the right choice in the meal. It doesn't want to go for the walk. It wants to be lazy. It wants to scroll. So when you think about the importance of how doing hard things will create an ultimately easier life for you, and you find yourself not wanting to do it, ask yourself one question. What would tomorrow me want me today to do? And you're more likely to act in a position of your own best self-interest. Thank you all for being here.